Let's talk about the trade dilemma with Democrats. I'm joined now by Delaware Senator Chris Coons. And Senator Coons, I wanted to talk to you because you're one of the handful of Democrats that one might call it is a little more open to free trade agreements than most members of your party. And I guess I would ask you, are you a growing minority? I guess it's an odd way of putting it, but a growing minority in your party when it comes to trade.
Well, Chuck, think about the contrast we saw yesterday in the speech by Donald Trump and the speech by Secretary Clinton. Donald Trump in Pennsylvania stood in front of a wall of, what, recycled waste of some kind, and presented ideas that were mostly recycled garbage. And he recalled fondly the era of the 50s in his speech and talked about building great big walls and raising most of the federal government's revenue from tariffs. That's an idea not from the 1950s, but the 1750s, something that would have made a lot more sense to Alexander Hamilton. And I think Secretary Clinton gave a speech that harkens back to the fact that under her husband, President Clinton, we had the most prosperity in my lifetime. She gave a very forward-looking speech about how in the 21st century, Democrats have ideas for investing in infrastructure, skills, and training. I do think we can be a party that leads to engagement with the world, and I do think it's possible if we have tougher trade enforcement to put together trade deals that could win bipartisan support. I don't know what party Donald Trump is campaigning for at this point.
I understand that, but I want to go to what's going on inside of your party because, look, I have been to plenty of places in Ohio and Iowa and in Pennsylvania that they thought these trade deals might be good for them, and they don't think they are. And they don't see, and they are pinning the blame of their economic struggles on these trade agreements. So I guess I ask you, the politics of trade has shifted dramatically here. How do you get it back?
Well, that's right, Chuck. The politics of trade are tough because globalization, the entrance of 2 billion people into the world economy over the last 20 years, really has hurt American workers. We can and should be tougher on trade enforcement. We can't build walls and go back to the 1750s and have our entire economy run, as Donald Trump imagines, on tariffs. We can embrace global competition, export more into the world, and do a better job of fighting competitors like China. The current Obama administration has 22 cases in the WTO fighting against China's non-tariff barriers. I do think it's possible to make the case that in this economy moving forward, we can win through fair trade deals. And I do think we have to own up to some of the failings of globalization and past trade deals. I think the person best positioned to do that, by temperament and experience is Secretary Clinton.
Well, let me ask you, do you now look back at NAFTA as more of a failure than a success?
Well, NAFTA is a trade deal that has woven us much more tightly to our two biggest trading partners, to Canada and to Mexico. And some sectors in the American economy won and others really lost. What I hear from Delawareans, particularly those in manufacturing, is they're really concerned that NAFTA wasn't a win for them. I think there's ways we can strengthen trade deals going forward, and I don't think Donald Trump's path forward, which is to build big walls with our neighbors and to try and tariff our way into the modern economy, I don't think that makes sense, and I don't think that can work.
Some straight talk here. TPP, it's going nowhere this year, is it?
It's going to be very difficult. It'll be very difficult to imagine a successful path for TPP.
And what does it look like in the spring of 17?
We'll see. It depends on who the next president is. I frankly don't know what Donald Trump's economic policy or social policy really is. He's fighting with his own party. As you mentioned at the outset, there hasn't been a Republican presidential candidate with his ideas for 7 decades.
But is this Democratic Party going to let President Hillary Clinton sign a TPP deal?
I think it would have to be a much stronger, much clearer TPP deal than the one that's been discussed so far. We don't have the final text. There isn't a TPP deal in front of us in Congress right now, so I think it would be tough. But those of us who believe it's possible to benefit from trade would be open to it.
Let me ask you this question. What about trade agreements do you think you've gotten wrong? Meaning you've been more of an open free trader, but now as you've learned about these agreements, as you've seen them play out, you're like, you know what? I thought I knew this about trade deals, and you know what? I was wrong.
Well, I'll tell you, early in my time here in the Senate, I voted against the Colombia Free Trade Agreement because I wasn't convinced that they were protecting the right to organize. There were far too many labor organizers being murdered in Colombia, and I wasn't convinced that we had a real partner in protecting labor rights and protecting the environment in Colombia. In the South Korea Free Trade Agreement, I voted the other direction because I looked into the details, looked into our partnership, and narrowly was convinced that was a good deal for the United States. I think we owe it to the people of our states and our country to look into the details. I don't think we can build walls, as Donald Trump suggests, and hide from the 21st century and go back to the 1750s and just try to protect our own country. The vast majority of our economy, in particular our manufacturing economy, relies on exports. Without exports, without engaging with the modern economy of the world, I don't think we can be the leader the world is looking for. After Brexit, after this unexpected change in policy in Britain, our allies are looking to us for leadership more than ever. And we need to engage our allies and our trade partners around the world, but we have to do it in a way that's fair to American workers.
Well, and all right, it's going to be tough sell these days.
It is.
We shall see. Trade agreements suddenly used to be the last bipartisan thing we could get done in Congress. Now we don't know if we're going to do that. Anyway, Senator Coons, thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you, Chuck.